Sponsors.
Hey, this is Mike Couch from Lost Limbs Foundation. Make sure you check out Mike and Dave on the Odyssey Files because they really need the listeners.
Oh!
Kim, what are you doing?
Well, I'm telling Mike and Dave, it's time to get on the show.
Oh, well, the Odyssey Files starts now.
Good evening, paranormal community. Welcome back to Monday night at 7 o'clock Central Time, which means you are listening to the Odyssey Files. I am your host, barely, today, Michael O'Neill. With me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. David Soyring. Good evening, Dave.
Good evening, Mike. I was just telling Sess it instantly turned into brutal winter here today. The lovely state of Minnesota at currently like 15 below zero wind chill.
Is it?
Yeah.
I was just
It
down
popped
in it.
up in my feed. Yeah. Well, here, let me tell you this, right? I went in the garage, got a bottle of water, poured it over a glass of ice, and the water from the garage started forming new ice on the ice crystals. I was like, what the hell? It's like a science experiment going on.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, it's cold.
It's also Minnesota, so
It is. I know.
You know, I think it's. I'm sure it'll probably be in the 40s next week, or even still this week.
Thursday.
So, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, today, so far, it's gotten a little better now that we are on the air. A little reprieve from the absolute nightmare that has been my day, and it this week is obviously Vegas week. The Vegas Para-Unity Convention is going on, Friday and Saturday, currently at the MGM in Vegas. So if you have your tickets for that, great. If you still want to get some, VegasParaUnity.com. But the MGM is making my life a living hell, so to speak. And they just today, so we're like 3 days before the convention, and they have pretty much asked for another $100,000, something like that, before the convention. Now this is before the convention, due by like Wednesday. And as a small business,
a chunk of it due today, right?
No, not really.
No.
Okay. I mean, yes and no, but right. So basically, I wasn't even including the stuff that like has been there for the last week or so.
Right.
But that actually adds even more. So yeah. So right now, the only part of the convention that is for sure, that is perfectly fine, even though it is, virusly, threatening, whatever the hell you want to call it, because of the Delta variant and now the Omicron variant, which almost all of the original cases have come from conventions. People catching
New York too. Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah. New York to
I,
Minnesota and Wisconsin. So there, it's here for sure. It's in our,
yep,
it's in the Midwest. Yep.
yep, it definitely is. I guess there's cases in Georgia, there's cases in Florida of this
Well,
new
Florida,
variant.
Florida.
Well, I didn't say Florida, I said Georgia.
Oh, you said Georgia and Florida.
Oh, did I? Oh, I
Yeah,
said
that's why I
Georgia
was
and
laughing.
South. Yeah.
I'm like Florida. Well, you know,
Well,
they sign up for all the shit. They want to be the first to get everything. So
they really do.
yeah.
So, uh, yeah. So I don't understand at all why. I guess why it's so difficult. I did want to postpone it. I wanted to postpone the convention to hopefully save people's lives. You know, to not be any sort of instigator and be responsible for anybody catching, you know, any of the variants on my watch. MGM was having none of it. They absolutely were not interested in allowing me to do it. And yeah, and I honestly cannot afford to cancel, even though honestly, it has breached my mind to just give a whole bunch of refunds over time and take my lickings. But so many people are excited about this, and I get it. I am too. Nobody is as upset right now as I am. And I guess that's really all I have to say on the matter without going into details. And we got some great stories here tonight, which I know we want to get to. And we have
Great guest.
probably one of our most phenomenal guests yet, even after 4 years, and some great people. We have the phenomenal Jason Hawes is going to be here during the second hour. I hope the first of many times that he is willing to come back and chat with us and talk shop. So we're really excited to have him here for the second hour. So with that said, let's get into stories. And I have not read or seen any of these. So I don't know if they're good. I don't know if I'm going to cringe. I don't know if I'm going to be overly harsh, like I was a few weeks ago, due to my day.
You know, I like when you get a natural reading on it, you know, and not think about it like too far ahead. Like if somebody else did stories for us, like I wouldn't look at them until the show started. I wouldn't read them ahead of time. I'd just be like, you know what? I'm just going to go into it and give you my initial thought. Like this is what I think, right? This is like, I just read it. This is what's coming to my mind right this moment. So
I do like to try and have, like, people have to understand that even though, yeah, sometimes my reactions to certain things are a little harsh, maybe for better term, better term, that is still not my initial reaction. So that is like
right.
the secondary or third airy,
tertiary
reaction to that. But
right.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens tonight. Plus, it really helps me read it first so that I don't screw up the reading.
Right. All right. I'll give you that, because sometimes you have a hard time with enunciation. So
whatever. I'm just seven words ahead of myself, and
I know.
You know. So anyway, story number 1: strange occurrences. I do not believe in ghosts or the paranormal. That should be the end of it.
That's it right there. Next story.
That's it. Exactly. Well, I'm sorry that you feel that way, reader or writer or whatever.
Right.
I do not believe in ghosts or the paranormal. I've never experienced it. I've always been able to debunk it. I'm extremely hesitant to even admit this because I don't believe what's happening to myself. But lately, I got pretty spooked in my apartment. I don't know what it is, but there must be a rational explanation, right? Whenever I would enter a room or turn on a light, I would see a black thing scurry and hide. I thought maybe it was an animal, a bug, or some dog fur, since my dogs have been shedding like crazy. But whenever I search for it or try to focus my eyes on it when I see it moving, it's just gone. The closest thing I could compare it to is the soot sprites from My Neighbor Totoro. I don't know that reference.
I don't either.
This went on for a few weeks before I mentioned it to my partner. They stopped and immediately looked at me to see if I was joking. They are a big believer in the paranormal, but knows how I feel about it, so they don't often admit their experiences to me. But I came to them with this and they were shocked. They've been seeing it too. They describe exactly what I've been seeing. We've lived in this apartment for 2 years now, and only recently we started seeing this. It's freaking me out, but there must be a logical explanation, right? I was also in the bathroom last week, and clear as day, heard my partner outside the door and call me. I called back asking what they wanted, but suddenly they were much further away and sounded confused. They had been in the bedroom the whole time and hadn't heard anything, nor did they call me at all. So it could have been the TV, even though I was way closer or louder than the TV. I don't know. Since that experience, we have a cat toy that we bought months ago, but the sound was broken and hasn't made a single sound. All of a sudden, no movement, no touching it. It started this garbled noise nonstop for the past week. It won't stop making this noise and nothing even triggered it. Please explain this. I honestly don't know. I mean, it could be a rat, could be a mouse, something like that is able to kind of, maybe there's a hole that's buried by the carpet that you don't see. Those things can definitely those things can move, and those things can shrink themselves into places that I would never even guess. So, I mean, that could be an answer for it. I find the reason that I go that far is because I think that if it's only when you turn on the light, it means that the light has startled it and is getting it to move out of the way. So I guess that I would look more towards that natural explanation. As for, hearing your voice called, people can hear all sorts of different auditory things and matrix what they're hearing. It's definitely possible if the TV was on that, somehow you heard something like your partner. It also can happen where you have a spirit that passes by, something like that. Maybe it was a relative that was visiting you, wanted to get a little kick out of it. I don't know. I would do it, but
I'm gonna do it. Yeah, I for sure for a little while until I move on. I'm definitely gonna be like popping in and saying hi to people. What's going on? Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah. You say that like while I'm trying to go to sleep, and I will start swinging.
So he won't be able to hit me. So you'll just be punching the air.
I don't care. It's the intent. The intent is to hit you. So
yeah, I know.
We will see. But and the thing about the cat toy, that can easily be explainable. It could have had a loose wire. Your cat knocked it around, and maybe it kind of subtly fell back into place. And now you kind of have only a half connection, which is like, or you're just kind of getting a garbled noise. Honestly,
I wonder, what would a garbled noise be in a cat toy? Like, does a cat, we had cat toys? I don't know, what cat, is this cat toy actually have a speech pattern to it? And it would say hello, cat. come play with me or something stupid like that. And then now it sounds all garbled. Like it didn't make any sense to me. So, because I mean, it would be like a bird chirping or something to me if it was a cat toy, right? I mean, it'd be like something like that. As we had one like that. It had a bird chirp.
Well, I would have always like taken it as like more of a bell, like something like that
Right.
that would be on
Yeah.
a cat toy.
Right.
So something that is supposed to have an innate sound. Beyond that, I don't have the necessary background knowledge on cat toys to know what that would sound like. But I definitely think that if it is some sort of like battery operated or something like that type of mechanism, that maybe there's just a loose wire in it, or was a loose wire, which is why you didn't hear anything for the longest time. And then maybe the cat was knocking it around and a wire fell back into place, something like that. But honestly, I don't know if you necessarily set out a mouse trap. I mean, that's worked for me recently.
It has.
And see if maybe there is something in your house that is an actual animal. That's all I got.
Okay. So I'm going a little different direction. The fact that this individual says, I do not, and not was in capital letters, believe in ghosts or the paranormal, never experienced it, right? Never experienced it. Yet they say they've always been able to debunk it. So that's kind of a contradictory of terms there. So if you've never experienced it, what the hell are you debunking? Right? So I think that because their partner is a believer, they are a big believer in the paranormal, right? But never want to talk about stuff because and share their experiences with them because they know because of how this writer feels. I think that there's a possibility here. And I'm throwing away the cat toy thing. The cat toy thing is a natural cause. Being in the bathroom and hearing somebody call your name, whatever, I'm throwing that out the window too. I'm going to focus solely on this black scurrying thing. I think that there's a possibility that if your partner is a huge believer and you are not, that there might be something out there trying to show you a reality that you're unwilling to accept. And it's just starting out as something that's not scary. It's because a little black thing scurrying on the floor, that's not scary. It just grabs your attention and you want to go investigate it to see what it is. I'd be interested, though, as to see if the dogs were reacting to it, because she said that he or she said that the dogs shed like crazy. So I'm assuming that they've got more than one dog because they used the word dogs. So I'd be interested to see if the dogs are chasing something around the house and that didn't get addressed. Like if they walk into a room and all of a sudden they start hauling ass and dive underneath the sofa or whatever, trying to figure out what this thing is. If they're not seeing it, then that now we've got like something's going on potentially. Because if the dogs aren't seeing it, you are. I don't know. Maybe I'd go in and get your eyes checked too. I think there's a logical explanation. So that's really all I got for that. I mean, I'm throwing out the name and I'm throwing out the cat toy. I'm not even going to address those, but I do think that somebody says that they've never experienced paranormal, but they've always been able to debunk it. I think they're lying to themselves is what I feel here. I think that they have experienced stuff and they're afraid of it. And so they're throwing out this idea of, I just debunk it because that's just how it is. And I wasn't raised that way and blah, 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 blah. And I think if you dug a little deeper and actually interviewed this person face to face, you would find out a little background on them. And I would bet you that they've had experiences and they just choose not to accept them, as we know a lot of the population does.
Yep.
So that's kind of what I get out of that story. So anything to add to that?
No.
Okay. So number 2, I have no idea what to think. It is kind of weird though. I've always seen paranormal things that can't be explained. This first part was while my family and I lived in England, UK. When I was about 12, I would get woken up by a little girl in an old-fashioned pink dress. She'd always put her finger to her lips to gesture for me to be quiet. That seems to be kind of like a theme that's running lately with this whole like ghost showing up and doing this. This one, exactly, because we've had like a bunch of stories recently that have kind of said something similar to that. This went on nightly for about a month. On the last night it happened, she did her usual finger to her lips to gesture to be quiet, but this time she gestured for me to cover my eyes. Dumbfounded, I did as she suggested, but being curious, I peeked from under my covers and I saw her standing outside my door next to the window, just outside of it, and she had a look of fright on her face. The next thing I know, she takes a quick glance at me before I see an arm grab and shove her out of the window. Terrified, I quickly covered my face, and shortly after I fell back asleep. I mentioned it to my stepdad, who was very curious about what had happened, so he did some research about our house to find out there were no deaths in our house prior to us moving in, and before it was built, it was just farmland. Fast forward 16 years, and now living in the U.S. Here just a few months ago in our new house. My stepdad and I are in the living room watching TV, and my two children, daughter age 5 and son age 7, were playing in my son's bedroom. I had walked into our kitchen to warm up my coffee in the microwave. From where my stepdad was sitting, he had a perfect view of down the hallway where the bedrooms are and the microwave in the kitchen. Upon returning to the living room, the atmosphere felt a little different, and the look of fright and worry on my stepdad's face was as if he saw a ghost. I'd asked him if he was okay. It took him a few moments to answer, as if he was trying to rationalize what had just happened. He'd walked into the kitchen, and I followed him and asked if he was okay. He told me that he watched my daughter walk into my room, was inside for a few minutes talking to whom he thought was herself, to find me wearing all the clothes that I had on for that day, following close behind her. He could see me in the kitchen in front of the microwave and me walking up the hallway at the same time. He said he thought he was seeing things but couldn't help keep looking between me and me to make sure. We heard the kids approaching, so I told him to wait a minute as I didn't want to talk about it in front of them. What my daughter said when she came into the kitchen was very eerie. With a straight face, she looks at me and says, "Mommy, you're funny as a ghost." My stepdad and I exchanged looks of what the F. I had asked her to repeat what she said. She said, "You're funny as a ghost." I have no idea what to make of it. Is this some entity approaching the children looking like me to seem less frightening to them, or something more sinister in the future? Or is it a guardian angel interacting with them looking like me to seem more familiar? Well, you know where I'm headed with this one. I mean, if you're a listener of the show, you already know that I'm going to say that it's something sinister that is trying to trick the children into being calm, or it's one hell of a time slip. And that would be one hell of a time slip, because your stepdad's sitting there actually watching you in two different locations at the same time. And so when you walked back in and saw him with the look on his face, I can understand why he had that look on his face. Because if I saw that, I would have that same look on my face, and I would have to get up and walk for a moment and gather my thoughts to understand what I just saw. And I just want to touch on this, as far as when you lived in the UK, I think that was probably a child spirit reaching out to you. I have a feeling that maybe you're a little sensitive, or she senses that you have some sensitivity to you, and she was reaching out to you because she knew that you could see her, and she was looking for a friend. What you saw at the end of that leads me to think that even though it wasn't a reported death, not all deaths get reported, especially going back in time. There's a chance that maybe she, I don't want to say it, but maybe an abusive parent or somebody, a neighbor or whatever, was mad at her for something and threw her out the window, shoved her out the window, and she passed away. And so she came back, and she felt comfortable enough visiting you enough times, I should say, that she showed you what happened to her. And I think she was reaching out for help in that instance. And I think that's all that was. I don't think that the two have anything to do with each other. But yeah, I think that man, I don't know. I'm gonna leave it with, I think that something is kind of trying to manipulate your kids and make them feel comfortable. Although I think your daughter might have a heads up on it. Because if, just what she said, Mommy, you're funny as a ghost. So she knew it wasn't you, which I find that to be very interesting. She knew that that was not you, that she saw, even though it looked like you, which is interesting. That's all I got.
My first reaction to, him seeing both of hers was, as you said, like a time slip, so to speak. Mostly because, and the daughter didn't say anything. This was not part of the story. Did the mom interact with her? Like, you're funny as a ghost. Does that mean that she was like peekaboo, or she was telling jokes, or she was doing something funny, or did whatever this other version of her come in and like trip over a chair and like fall on her ass or something like that was funny, but not actually interact with the little girl. I also wanted to throw it out there, and I know it's rare, and I don't know what would have caused it, or if she has had any more experiences than just that little girl. But if she was somehow able to like project herself, if somehow she was like astral projecting herself to another part of the hall, or the house. But again, like, she doesn't seem to have any prior experiences with that. It was kind of a one-time thing. So I think that that's pretty far-fetched. It's a big stretch to go that way. I just wanted to throw it out there as a possibility. If it kept happening, I would agree with you that it might be something sinister, something that is trying to do something, with these kids. But if it's a one-off, I almost want to say it's probably more of a time slip type of issue. I am in full agreement about the little girl when she was younger. I definitely think that, that sort of thing, especially with how you phrased it, and that final kind of scene that this woman saw, will lead me to believe that there was some sort of parental, like daddy doesn't like, to hear noises, that sort of thing. Right. Or be quiet, or even one of those, if there is another spirit in the house that is somewhat sinister, be quiet or he'll find us, one of those. Right, he'll find.
Yep. Things. Yep.
And I hope that didn't happen to her. I mean, if it is, that's a flipping tragedy. If that is exactly, she had an abusive parent or whatever, and they just decided to, one day shove her out a window. That I agree also that just because there's no recorded deaths doesn't mean that there were none there. I'd be interested to kind of hear like what kind of dress she had on. Is it Victorian era? Is it from, way back in the 1800s, something like that? Maybe the records only go back to 1930s, so.
Well, right. And that's exactly right. Because there were I know that there were times when there was a case I was working on in a small town, and the little building where they had all the record, and it was all done by hand, and where they had the record thing, there was a fire, and a whole bunch of the records got destroyed. So like prior to them actually getting back to putting him onto microfiche, or to putting him into an electronic system, anything prior to like 1940 was gone. There's just no record of it anymore. So it's hard to say, but it did say an old-fashioned pink dress is how she phrased it. So I'm assuming that it was going back to at least turn of the century. To me, old-fashioned is going back at least to late 1800s, kind of in my mind. Because I don't think like 1920s and 30s and 40s dress is old-fashioned to me. I think more of like late 1800s, that whole fancy with the lace and the Victorian look. You know, it's kind of the feeling I get. But
yeah, I mean that definitely could be. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I know you don't like child spirits, and
but in that one, in my defense, in that one, she was just there, I think, to deliver a message. So she's not haunting the place. She's just there saying, "Hey, this is what happened to me," and nobody ever found out the truth. That's what my gut, like from reading that, that's what I feel. And in that case, I believe it. I believe that there's children that can come back and tell you that I got killed and this is how I got killed. I just don't believe that there's children running around playing in the hallways of hotels and stuff because they're not going to be there. It's going to be something else that's mimicking children to get you to drop your guard. That's never going to change. Gotcha. So anybody who listens to the show knows that, and you know that as well. That's never going to change for me.
Yep. No, I understand. But yeah. Otherwise, I don't have anything else. In order for me to say anything, as if there's some other spirit trying to mimic the mom to get to the children or whatever, I would need far more like experiences than just this one time. So,
I agree.
All right, number three, I need answers. Don't we all? So here's what they wrote. I never really experienced anything scary or paranormal, but I am a spiritual being. I believe in my spirit guide, spiritual team. Go team. Today I was in my room and I was about to close my window. My door opened. I thought it was either my niece or the other kid or kids, but when I went to open the door, no one was there. Then I thought to myself, maybe it's something else. So I closed the door, right? And it opened again. After that, I put my hand over the door and the door opened, but I felt some resistance, like pushing it as if someone was on the other side, pushing it gently. I got kind of paranoid and I'm like, what's going on? Now I can't sleep without the light being on. This isn't the first time this happened either. But the other times it happened, the door only opened once, never again. But this time it freaked me out. Any idea why the door opened? And why did I feel resistance as if someone was pushing the door open? Come on, man. I better not have ghosts in my house. I definitely don't think, I definitely do not think that you have ghosts in your house. Because honestly, if the only thing that ever happens is this door, you're better off than 95% of the other people who believe they might have ghosts in their house.
Yeah.
But I would do some experiments. I would try to figure out if there is certain things that cause the door to open. Are you stepping on a floorboard? Do you have carpet? Do you have hardwood floors? There's obviously a lot more information that we need in order to fully try to disprove what may be going on. But I mean, I have dealt with doors that on certain things will unlatch and they will move and they will do certain things. I've been on cases where they talk about like not so much cupboards, but like a chest of drawers or something like that open out, opens without anybody touching it. Like they just suddenly discover that it's open. They close it. An hour later, they come up. Nobody else has been there, and it's open again. Well, come to find out that if you stepped on a certain floorboard or whatever, it would, the vibrations, it's a little off kilter. There's a lot of different explanations for why that door might open. Now, why you felt resistance, I can't say that because I don't know how much resistance you actually felt. Like this, it was like you could not move it.
Well, it said pushing it gently.
Pushing it.
So gently. I'm not thinking it was like a fight. That's not like the feeling I got. It was more like a. I'll address that when I answer. Sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. But it said gently. I just wanted to, in case you didn't remember that.
Well, right, but everybody has a different definition of gently. So I mean, honestly. Agreed. Without actually seeing the door itself, there's nothing really more I can say other than, there's a lot of different factors that can go into this. We have suddenly, or I shouldn't say suddenly, but recently found out that my garage door is magical because it's got a broken spring. It can't lift the door up by itself unless you help it for the first, 4 feet, something like that. Like it's literally in half. But hell, you get a temperature of 36 degrees, you hit that button, it'll lift all the way up by itself. And then you'll come home later that night and it won't. So we almost thought that it was a holiday thing because it worked on the holiday for the first time in months.
It did, yeah.
And then twice, like 2-3 times.
Yep.
And then the next day, wouldn't do it. Wouldn't lift it up.
And you were so excited too. You were like, "Oh, it's fixed! I'm so excited, it's fixed."
I'm like,
and then it was back to disappointment.
Exactly. So there can be so many different factors in this that can make that door act in that fashion. I think you don't have spirits in your house. I think that you just need to better figure out what the mitigating factors are that makes that door act that way. But I think it's natural.
Yep, I would agree with you. I think this is one of those stories I threw in there specifically because I think it's an overreaction from somebody who's watching too much paranormal TV. My guess on this one is that there's a draft going through the house. And that I think if there's windows open in other parts of the house, that I think you might have that whole vacuum suction thing kind of going on. And I agree with you that if it's an older house, and it doesn't say it is, but if it is, those door latches get worn out after 100 years of closing and opening up a door. Even doesn't even have to be 100 years. It'd be 20 years, 50 years, whatever. Door latches start to get weak. They start to lose the spring loses its pressure. So I think that there is a totally natural explanation for it. The only thing that I have that I would like a little bit more clarification on, I'm with you 100%, is the pushing it gently part. Like, what did it feel like? Did it feel like there was somebody pushing the door? Or was it possibly something like a little bit of vacuum pressure that could hold a door with a little bit of resistance, and you're trying to push it, and instead of it just going easy like you normally feel it, for some reason there's this little bit of resistance going on because of some vacuum pressure. So I think that that's probably an explanation for why this is. I think you're overreacting. So this is a direct response to the person who wrote this in. I think you're overreacting. I don't think there's any reason to be scared, and I don't think you need to sleep with your light on. I think that you can relax. I think it's okay to relax. I think you take a deep breath. I think you can take control of your space, like I always say. I think you can stand in your bedroom and you can say, you know what, this is my personal space. I enjoy my personal space. I don't want to be disturbed while I'm in here. If there is something here and you want to coexist, that's fine. We can coexist, but I don't want you to come into my personal space. This is my relaxation space. This is my quiet time, my personal space. And I ask you to please respect that. And I think if you say that, you might be surprised. And if there is something there, if this is not natural causes, that might just resolve the whole issue. And then you don't have to sleep with your light on anymore. So I'm always a big proponent of taking back your space. So
when I first, when I was reading it, my first reaction was, you don't need to sleep with your light on.
No,
that is a gross overreaction to that one. And I agree. And that's probably, I think that's probably a result of too much paranormal television.
Yep.
So,
and you just got your mind is racing and, you're scaring yourself. So, okay. Moving on. Number 4, Dad woke me up at 4 a.m. scared of a ghost. My dad moved into a house in the middle of the woods about 2 years ago, and I moved in with him soon after to help him get around and take care of the house and whatnot. Side note, it's an old house on land that Native Americans heavily inhabited in the South. Honestly, this house is really weird. The first night I spent here, I was woken by a woman whispering, "Is anyone home?" right next to me as I was about to fall asleep. My dad didn't believe me when I told him the next day. It's taken a while to get used to living in the deep woods, but something about this property is off. There's been more than a few times that I have actually felt a heavy presence, almost like someone is standing right behind me. I have a cat who I rely on to alert me when there's someone approaching my room. And there have been times when he's alerted me, but nobody was there. Other times he stares at the same corner of my room with an expression that tells me he can see something I can't. There's been more times than I can count where I'll be leaving a room and a cabinet will slam, or it sounds like something was moving behind me. It sounds silly, but it's odd enough for me to notice. I've mentioned it to my father, but he didn't think much of it until early this morning when he woke up and went downstairs to find the basement flooded. Somehow the shower in the basement was turned on and the drain had been clogged. Neither of us used the shower in the basement. He's now fully convinced there's a ghost in his house. I don't know. If you ask me, I think it's more than the house. I get that feeling even when I'm out on a hike. I always leave food scraps and leftovers out on the tree line for the animals, and sometimes, coincidentally, find little treasures in the same spot. Almost like I made a trade with Mother Nature, LOL. Once I left strawberry cake leftovers out, and the next day found a stone with a pink crystal formation. Another time, I found an arrowhead carved out of stone. What is going on here? All right. So what's going on here? Let's start at the beginning. I think it's very possible that living out deep in the woods, that there could be natural things happening that do not happen in maybe a more populated location. Woodland entities, things like that exist. They could be curious as to who you are. You know, it's an old house. Maybe it hadn't been lived in for a while. Now it is again. The fact that it's on Native American land, if you're a fan of the show, you've heard me say this 100 times. Every part of America was heavily populated Native American land till we came and stole it. So the fact that it was on Native American land and it's in the South, that's neither here nor there. You know, if it was deep in the woods, I would imagine there would have been some Native American presence in the area. The woman whispering in your ear, "Is anyone home?" You're just about to fall asleep. I've had instances where I was just about to fall asleep and thought I heard something or heard a bang or a loud slap or a clap. I think that's just your brain. I think there could be some anxiety. I think that could be a little bit of stress that's just getting let go just as you go, like getting into your comfortable sleep, and your body's just kicking that stuff out. And for some reason, maybe it causes some sort of reaction, or maybe in your mind it causes some sort of reaction. You know, it startled me. I've woken up a couple times to that loud slap noise. It startles me. I wake up, I look around, I'm like, who the hell just slapped their hands? There's nobody there. Roll back over and go to bed. I don't want to laugh here, but I got a feeling Mike's going to jump on this one. Your dad doesn't believe anything that's happening, and then he believes that there's a ghost in the cabin, and he's fully convinced because the shower in the basement turned on and the drain was clogged. You know, there's a lot of ways that a spirit can show you its presence. I have not ever heard of the dreaded shower in the basement clogged drain method. Now, that's not to say that that could not have happened. I'm not trying to discount it 100%. I'm just saying that there could be a very logical explanation. We all know that sometimes pressure builds up, and if it's an old fixture and the seals are old, the gaskets are old, there's a very likely possibility sometimes that things can turn on by themselves. It's happened in the past. I know people like to always say it's paranormal. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. I certainly... that would be a stretch for me. So, but I want to get to the thing that I found most interesting in this story. And it's not your dad and it's not your house. It's the fact that you're going and leaving things and trading in the woods, and that you're actually getting things back. That's very interesting. You know, there's been stories about Bigfoot for a long time. One of the repetitive stories is that people that are in an area where there are Bigfoot entities would go out and leave something like a gift, and they would go back to that same spot, and there would be a gift in return. And I can't remember if it was Expedition Bigfoot or not, but there was an episode, it was something like that, where they left an apple on a tree stump, and when they went back, there was a marble. Now, I just got to say it, right? Unless a human being walking around with a marble in their pocket found the apple and said, cool, an apple, I'm going to leave them the marble, I would have no explanation for that. None whatsoever. But that sounds to me like that's what's going on here, is that you're starting to trade things. So you leave a piece of strawberry cake, you get a stone with a pink crystal formation. Another time you left something else and you got an arrowhead carved out of stone, which obviously they're all carved out of some type of stone or obsidian or something along those lines. So I find that more interesting than I find the ghost story. I don't know that there's any ghost in the house or not, to be honest. I think it just be living deep in the woods. Sometimes that freaks people out and plays with their mental state. I do find it very interesting, though, that you're trading stuff, and I'd be interested to see if that trading thing continues. So that's all I got.
So let me just point out right from the start that one of your first errors was to rely on your cat to alert you to anything other than its feeding time. Okay, so just want to throw that out there. So that, shockingly, that's all I'm going to say about that.
It is shocking.
Now, it just wasn't enough of an interaction with the feline. But
I actually left that for you too. So
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So, the thing about this is, and I agree with you, Dave, I don't think necessarily that it being Native American land or in the South has anything to do with it. I just love the fact that he's like in the South.
Right.
like that was some mitigating factor that was off the charts. Like that explains it all. And,
that's the whole easterly wind at 29 miles an hour again.
Yeah.
That's what I felt when I read it.
Exactly. Just that little extra fact that for some reason is supposed to change the entire context of the story.
Right.
So, but I mean, honestly, even is anybody home? Well, let's just say for the sake of argument that is what he heard. Mm-hmm. Like everything just seems to be residual in origin, up to the shower, because it's just a heavy feeling, or the cat looking at something that's not there. It just, to me, it doesn't really seem to be interacting at all. It just seems to be him, being in the right place when it happens. So, but the shower, I again agree with you. I do not think there's anything paranormal about it. They don't use it, so that drain could have been clogged for who knows how long, just from dirt and grime and stuff over the time, just getting into it.
Yep.
And this would almost be a phenomenal question for our guest tonight. But if there's I shouldn't say there's one thing. There's tons of things that I learned, but if there's one thing that I have learned from just the fact of Jason and Grant being plumbers, it's the basic fact of, as you said, gaskets, stoppers, everything wear out. It could be that it had some sort of backup. It blew up and the water came in, and again, that clogged drain, that's what you're going to get. I don't think that's paranormal in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. Now, I want to point out here's what I'm taking away from the last part of the story, is that even Bigfoots love Little Debbie. Just going to say.
Right.
So.
And jerky.
And jerky. Well, and jerky. But
only Jack Links. But only Jack Links, right.
But only Jack Links.
Brand specific. Yes.
Hey, everybody's got their preferences. Okay. Even Bigfoot.
I was going to say, jerky is jerky, but it tastes different from the manufacturers, right? I mean, like one tastes more like pepperoni, one tastes more like beef. I mean, it's so, yeah, I agree.
Okay. But I honestly love that part. I agree. You know, the whole not even so much trade, but almost like a mutual respect. You
Mm-hmm.
know, where one like whoever this person, let's just say it's Bigfoot, you know, that there's Sasquatch in the area and it appreciates, you know, what it's leaving out. You know, they obviously don't get strawberry cake, you know, in the woods. So I
No.
mean, these food scraps and everything, and it may just be a natural instinct, a natural knowledge for the Sasquatch, who I believe is a very intelligent creature, to just
Mm-hmm.
be like, you know, hey, I appreciate you doing this, and here's a little something for you.
Yep.
I would keep doing it. I would almost like go above and beyond, you know, and make like almost like a full meal and leave it out there and see what happens. You know, see if you get a really big, maybe it'll kill a squirrel and taxidermy it for you, and then leave that. I don't know. Who knows what Bigfoot thinks is a good gift?
I agree.
But
It's the concept of Bigfoot doing taxidermy on a squirrel that just made my mind explode in laughter. Sorry.
well, that was the point.
Yeah, I figured.
So, so yeah, I mean that's my answer. I would say continue doing that. Continue doing it. See if it continues. And I would not, only because I think Bigfoot, I think Sasquatch is able to kind of know that it's there, because I'm sure a lot of people were like, you should put up a camera
Mm-hmm.
and do it. And I honestly think that if you did that, it would never happen again.
No, it would stop. I agree 100%. Yep.
So
I think there's a beautiful thing happening there, and I agree with you. I wouldn't screw it up by trying to capture evidence. I would just keep leaving stuff out, and I would just keep documenting it and let it just be a phenomenal mystery, but a pleasant mystery, right? I mean, it's something that you could tell your kids about. I mean, that's like a family legacy kind of thing. And I agree with you. I would not screw that up by trying to put any type of recording equipment out there, because I think that Sasquatch is going to know it's there. They're going to sense it. They're going to know there's a trap camera hiding in a tree. You know, if they didn't know that, think of all the phenomenal pictures there would be on trap cameras already. Right?
yeah,
So,
exactly.
all right.
All right. Shadow figures in the mirror. I have about 3 mirrors in my room. 2 of them face each other, and one of them faces my bed. At night, I see these creepy faces and shadow figures staring at me through the mirror. My gut tells me to look away and ignore it. When I stare back at it, it seems like it's staring into my soul. And the more I pay attention to it, the scarier it seems. When I look away, it feels like I'm being stared at. I'm not religious, but my parents are. I don't really believe in ghosts, but this is creeping me out. So should I ignore it and trust my gut, or any advice is welcome? My advice is move the mirrors. I mean,
There you go.
we did it.
Easy one.
We did a show on mirrors,
Yep.
you know, a couple months back, and like the number, like you're breaking like the top 3 or whatever of like what not to do with mirrors. You're not supposed to face them at each other. You're not supposed to face your bed. You shouldn't have a bunch of them in your room. Like, you're breaking everything here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not particularly buying into this, you know, stuff and whatnot. I'm sure that you're probably matrixing the shit out of everything, and then, you know, psyching yourself out. But honestly, move the mirrors.
Yeah.
That's my entire answer.
No, I agree with you 100%. You know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of that scene in Constantine. You know, like I think like this person saw Constantine and saw the trapping of the demon into the mirror right before he, fights it out the window. And that's what it seems like to me. Like, I'm like, yeah, you've seen way too many, or they saw the movie Oculus or something like that. You've seen way too many scary movies involving mirrors, Candyman. I would agree. I agree with you. I think that the common sense here, again, I think this is one of those things that's got a lot of paranormal TV involved in it, or a lot of telling ghost stories to each other. But if it's bothering you, move the mirrors, right? Like if you see faces and they look evil and it's like they're trying to rip your soul out of your chest, why are you just leaving the mirrors in the same place day after day after day? Move them, turn them around, cover them, put a sheet over them, right? If for some reason you can't move them because they're these great big heavy mirrors and you're not strong, and there's no way you could get them off the wall and move them, or they're bolted or they're screwed into the wall, or somehow they're screwed in and affixed permanently to the wall, or mostly permanently to the wall, and you can't remove them, then cover them. Throw a pillowcase over them, throw a sheet over them at night, and see if that helps. That would be my advice. So, okay, the man that wasn't. This happened a few years back. My husband and I had recently moved to his hometown, and we were on a Sunday stroll, walking around downtown with my husband showing me around the place. His phone rang, and he answered, turning his back to the street to muffle the sounds of traffic. I waited and continued taking in the surrounding buildings and the people rushing by. That's when I see it. Across the street, in the middle of the sidewalk, stands a man. An older man who looks like he's been beaten up. One of his eyes is purple and completely swollen shut. His mouth bloody. He's making small movements with his hands as if trying to reach out to people rushing by, but he doesn't make a sound. There is a dark pool of blood on the sidewalk where he is standing. I can't believe what I'm seeing. I can't believe all these people just walking by and not doing anything. We lock eyes. I swear I can feel him pleading with me despite the fact that he's still not making a single sound. I don't have my phone, so I turn to my husband and demand he give me his cell phone. He tells the person he's talking to that he has to go, ends the call, and passes me his phone with a confused look on his face. I tell him there's a man across the street who looks like he's been beaten up and we should call the police. My husband looks over my shoulder, back at me, and asks, where? Annoyed at my husband, I turn around with my hand pointing towards the man's location, and the man is gone. There's no blood on the sidewalk. There is a young woman cleaning ice cream off a child's shirt and presumably scolding him, standing right where I had seen that man less than 5 minutes ago. I do a few frantic double takes where I turn to my husband and back to the street, telling myself I'm not going insane. My husband, probably thinking that my Northern European ass is suffering from heat stroke, sits me down in the shade and makes me finish a whole bottle of water. We went home shortly after that. What did I see? What you saw was an apparition of someone who was in dire need of help. And that person who needed help happened sometime in the past. And that is one of those classic moments that we call the stone tape theory, is that there was so much energy was released at that specific spot because of that specific moment of what was happening to that man, that energy left a permanent mark there. Now, why you saw it, was it just random? I would say yes. That's going to be my guess, is that it was just random. I'm sure that other people probably have seen it and then just been like, I don't know what the hell that was. I'm not going to tell anybody about it because they're going to think I'm nuts. I'd be running around telling everybody I knew about it. But, I mean, that's just me. But I think that it was just random. I don't think that, unless you've had all kinds of other prior experiences, I don't think that was your first experience. Although, as I say that, he looks you in the eye, meaning that maybe he saw you. So I don't know, but what you saw was a residual. What you saw was a residual incident that happened sometime in the past of this guy regretfully getting beaten up, or in some type of accident. Maybe he didn't have to get beaten up. He could have been hit by a car. He could have fallen, like fallen off of a ledge or something. There could have been a lot of reasons why his eye was swollen and his mouth was bloody and he's standing in a little pool of blood. But to me, that's exactly what that is. That's a perfect example of the stone tape theory. All yours.
Yeah. We always think back to and this is something that we have discussed, although there's really no good answer yet. And that is why certain people say or see certain things, why certain people hear certain things.
Right.
Is it a frequency thing? Is it a lenient, or not a leniency, a legacy type thing? What the hell word am I looking for here? Doesn't matter. So, but I mean, like, is it something in your DNA that allows you to see certain things that you may not otherwise see?
It's like a genetic genetic. Forget it now. I forgot the second word, but I know what you're saying.
Right, right. So
genetic predisposition. There you go.
Sure.
So you're genetically predisposed to having some type of abilities.
Right. I mean, I don't necessarily know if this is the stone tape theory, if this entity, this apparition was actually able to see her and is actually able to be like, excuse me, like, I need help. Why are you missing me? How are you not seeing me? Because it did say that, like, it looked like it was pleading with her, right?
Yeah, but he was also making movements with his hands trying to reach out to everybody who was rushing by, and she couldn't understand why the hell everybody was just walking by him.
Right. And
so why he would see her and nobody would, I don't know. That's a good question. It's one of those ones that we don't have an answer for yet. Nobody on that side of the street who's walking through him sees him, but she sees him from across the street.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's obviously something about her specifically is the reason why, she's the only one that is able to see him. But, otherwise it could go residual. My only thing is if he was legitimately, like, reacting to people walking by him and trying to get people's attention and legitimately saw her, then it's obviously an intelligent type of entity if it's reacting to its surroundings, but probably didn't have enough energy to actually maintain manifestation. And so, and I don't know why it is. Maybe when we bring Jason on here in a second, he can answer this for us. Why is it always when we turn away? Like, they're always there, and then we're like, what? And then we turn back and they're gone. It's always when we turn away and then look back that they're gone. And
I've always wondered that too. I wonder if you just sat there and you continued to stare at them and just like, give me your phone. You know what I mean? Like, reach out to the person. Don't look at your husband. Just say, give me your phone. I need to call 911. And you never left sight of him. Would he still be there?
Yeah. But the second you look down into your pocket to make sure you got your phone,
to get your phone or whatever, right? It's gone.
They're gone.
Right.
They're gone. They're always gone. They're always gone. So is it a trick of the mind? Is it intentional? What is, maybe it's just a timing thing, but
I think that's a good. I think we should ask Jason that. I think that's a good question.
It is. So he's waiting in the backstage area. He knows his question is coming. Start thinking about it. So
we expect greatness.
Our bar's here. So
yeah.
All right. Well, that does it for stories. I don't have anything to add to that. We're going to take a very short break where a bunch of promos are going to get played because we don't have commercials anymore, and then we'll be back with Mr. Jason Hawes. See you in a bit.
Hi, everybody. This is Chip Coffee, Psychic and Medium. I just wanted to let you know that when you're in the mood to get weird, you need to tune in to the Odyssey Files with two of the biggest weirdos I know, David and Michael. Take my advice. It doesn't get any weirder than that.
Hey, this is Dustin Perry from Ghost Hunters, and you're listening to Dave and Mike on the Odyssey Files. It's not the best show you're ever going to listen to, but it's also probably not the worst.
Hey, everybody, it's Chad Lindbergh, and you are listening to the Odyssey Files with David and Michael. And let me tell you, it's almost as painful as a Skype glitch.
And we are back. And again, she didn't change off the G-rated promos, but that's okay.
Uh-oh.
Do
we have racy promos?
Not necessarily racy, but you know, there's
We do
some
have
that
we have kind of a sexy promo, I know for sure.
Elizabeth?
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay?
When she's all whacked up on cough syrup? Yeah.
That's right. So without further ado, obviously myself included have been watching this guy since before I became an investigator, and in fact is part of the inspiration for how I became one. So phenomenally ready to bring on Mr. Jason Hawes.
Hello. Hey, what's
Jason!
going on, guys?
Hey, good to see you.
What's going? How's it going?
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
I was just getting ready to post a link to this. So, anyways.
Well, I would say don't let me stop you, but
I'm doing it right now. I won't let you stop me. Trust me. There we go.
So,
there we go.
We already have our first question, which
the stone tape theory.
Well, not
yeah,
basically
more of the looking away.
That mainly refers to residual type haunts. And I heard what you were saying with the guy reaching out as people walking by, but we have to take into consideration that when it initially happened in the beginning, there might have been people walking by that he was doing that to, and that could be who. If it's just a tape player and it's playing itself over and over again, he's reaching out to people. Yeah, there might still be people in that area now in the present time, but he could have been reaching out to people back then that just are not that you got to remember didn't suffer a traumatic experience, so their energy is not trapped within whatever is holding the energy. So that could explain that. I mean, he might not really be looking at her. He's reaching out to who he remembers seeing, or who, the energy remembers at that moment. That's a
phenomenal point. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mike. You can ask. No, you can ask it because you thought of it.
So what we were referring to why it always seems to be that when somebody sees a spirit and then they look away really quick to grab their phone or do something and they look up, it's always gone. Like it always seems to wait until you look away.
And it's a great question because I've actually talked with people about this too, and I also dealt with scientists on this, and I was talking to a professor at MIT at one point, and their belief is that when you're seeing it out of your peripheral, your mind's not shutting down. It's not locking out what's real and what's not in the world. And it's when you turn and you're focusing directly on it, that's when your mind kind of shuts it off. It's and is that definite? I don't know. I think that's a little beyond my understanding, but I can understand where you'll see things happen out of the peripheral. But when you turn and look, it's not there. So are you using a different part of your eye and a whole part of your mind is working differently at that point? It's not until you totally look on and focus, and then you're trying to adjust mentally. Because you got to remember, just like children are prone to see things that adults are not. It's not until we start telling them what's real and what's not that we deprogram them. And now they start, to a child, a big fat guy comes down the chimney, a big bunny brings them a basket. Trees can talk, anything is possible. And they have their invisible friends, Bobby, and all this. But when we tell them as they get older that Bobby's not real, he's a figment of your imagination, now we're taking them and we're shutting them off. We're closing them down to what is possible. And I think we take away a lot from them at that point. So it's one of those things where you got to just let them grow up and be as open as they need to be.
This is kind of a disturbing thought that just popped into my head. But what
is it? Me and boxers?
And I hope that I hope this never happened. But God knows that somewhere in our timeline of humanity, I'm sure this probably has. What if? I mean, do you ever think that there was a time like when a group, like a control group of children, before they ever were told no, got kind of taken away and taken someplace, and so they never were told that these things didn't exist?
I 100% believe there had. I mean, right down to the Soviet Union did test on children.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah,
it's sad to say, but the Germans did some really gruesome tests on children and psychic abilities. Yeah, and I mean, even the United States has done tests. I mean, we've done everything right down to building rooms out of limestone as interrogation rooms to see if there was different ways of interrogating using different types of energy. So there's a lot of things that, I mean, there's a lot of tests that have been done on children and testing them like that. But you got to remember also, there's a lot of other countries that have been more open to the possibility of psychic abilities and stuff. I've always looked at it as everybody has the ability to be psychic. If you go to 1,000 so-called haunted locations, and out of those 100 are haunted, your body tends to remember how you felt at those 100 haunted locations. Now, does that make you a full-blown psychic? No, but it makes you more, and I hate the word psychic, I like sensitive. But it makes you more sensitive than somebody who's never had the ability or the chance to go to 1,000 so-called haunted locations and go to really 100 that are. So you're more sensitive than that next person. Now, you can take that, you can work with that, you'll have a foundation where now you can strengthen it, but you need to have that chance to start off. You need to have some sort of a trigger to initially get you going with it.
I'm curious, since it sounds like you know more than I know about it. Are you guys hearing that feedback?
A little bit.
I've never ever had feedback before. And of course, Jake on the show, and now I got feedback.
It's all my fault. I know it's reflecting off the bald head.
What any follow up to those experiments? Did they actually publish any results that you're aware of that show that these kids might be more open as adults? Let's say if they ever got to adulthood.
Well, there were all records with the Soviet Union, and a lot of those have, of course, been destroyed and everything else throughout time. And the Soviet Union broke up. A lot of that other stuff has been lost. But I mean, there were a bunch of reports that were out there at one point. I'm not sure where they are or how far you'd have to dig to find them. But I remember even way back remember Sightings, the TV show?
Yeah.
Sightings actually had a report on the stuff way back then as well. And right down to a Russian lady who was able to manipulate objects. So, I mean, these things were out there. It's but again, you have the Soviet Union, which broke into all these little countries, and God only knows what happened with all that information.
So it's this is new to me. Like, this is the first time that I ever heard of like stones and energy actually being used to potentially like help interrogate people. Now, is that to find out if maybe there's certain stones made people feel uncomfortable and that sort of thing? Or
I think it was more just testing out, different theories throughout time of different stones holding types of energy and so forth. It's one of those things where we all know that the governments are very unlikely to come forward with most of the stuff that they've done or they're doing, because the least thing they want to do is let everybody know. But I mean, you can go down to some of the old CIA projects and so forth with that, mind altering drugs and things of that nature which they used. But the list goes on and on. I mean, there's tons of things that we don't know that have never been declassified, but there's been tons of things where, and that's why you hear these conspiracy theorists out there, and you get all these people like they're crazy, but then 10, 15, 20 years later, you find out, well, there's a little truth in what they were saying there. Now, wasn't there? So, and that's what a lot of people don't realize. It's until 20 years later, it's kind of left the mind. People aren't thinking about it anymore. But back then, they were calling everybody crazy who thought this, and you find out that there is truth behind it.
I'm laughing because that makes me think of the post I saw from you recently on the guy who said that all the birds are not really birds anymore, and that they're all government-controlled robotic drones that are spying on us. All the real birds have been destroyed and taken away.
and I love people's response, because I love to post and stuff. But people's responses like, well, it just crapped in my car, and somebody else responds, yeah, it's doing an oil change and all this stuff. So you gotta love it. I mean, people have fun with it, and that's what it's about. I post a lot of silly stuff. I do, because I find it amusing, and I put it out there, and most of the other people find it amusing. It's of course, you always get some of those people who, no matter what you do, they're just looking to be offended by something you post.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we know that. Yeah.
It's like I posted
So,
a thing about, I posted a thing that I found. It was a thing with Godzilla, and Jesus Christ.
Oh,
and
Jesus, yes.
And then, and people loved it. But then you get these people saying, why, how could they do Godzilla against Jesus Christ? Are they making fun of Jesus? I'm like, yeah, they put him up against Godzilla. I mean, that's pretty top of the line stuff. I mean, you got to give him credit there. So it's just, you got to find humor. You got to be able to laugh. I think too many people forgot how to laugh, and it sucks.
Yes, it does. So, I mean, how do you deal? I mean, because you're obviously a very popular person. I mean, now you're starting to get back out onto the circuit. I mean, do you come across people who just have no sense of humor whatsoever? And how do you handle those people now?
Yeah, I definitely have come across people with no sense of humor. Honestly, I don't deal with it. I live my life the way I live my life. I'm gonna die a happy man, a family guy, happy man who enjoyed what he did. And if somebody else just wants to find offense in anything and everything you say, then I mean they're gonna end up dying miserable. Bottom line, I mean, I guess we all draw our own conclusions and we make our own story.
Yeah. So sorry, Dave, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead. I got a question for him, but I'm going to wait until we change topics, and then I'm going a different direction. So
I got you, because I do want to ask you about, because you had mentioned how you're a family man and everything, and when you first started, Ghost Hunters, besides I think maybe Most Haunted from the UK, I think there was no other real paranormal show out there. So we had no basis like we do now for what to expect, from moving from doing an investigation maybe once a month, something like that, and then going over evidence, to being asked to go to Missouri, being asked to go to Texas, being asked to go all over the country. What did you find the most surprising and the most difficult to adjust to from all of a sudden having cameras on you and being asked to go all over the country?
Well, we had, TAPS had, and even before the show, we were the highest visited paranormal website in the world. So, I mean, even at that point, I think we're averaging about 30,000 hits a day. And now we average about 90 some odd million visitors a year. So, yeah, of course. So we were always getting cases. That's why we created the TAPS family, which are all these groups all over the country and actually 17 other countries. So when we get a case somewhere, we can send a TAPS family there immediately. I think the biggest thing that I wasn't prepared for, because I turned down doing TV 5 times before I finally accepted to do Ghost Hunters, because I didn't want to be on TV. I didn't think that people would really see, Steve, who was a police officer. I was a plumber at the time. I was a computer programmer and a master tech prior to that. Grant, I had just brought in and taught him plumbing. I didn't think anybody would want to sit around and watch us investigating a place or sitting around in a house for 8 hours a night for a week straight. And, can kind of get boring. So we finally agreed to do the show, agreed to do 10 episodes, figured at least we'll get the word out. And who would have known it would have become what it did? I mean, it was the top watched cable show. It was us and Mythbusters that were the highest watched cable shows, pretty much all week long. We were getting ratings that networks get. And it was amazing. It was amazing to see it blow up to what it was. I mean, at one point we were airing in 170 countries. And then we were one of the first shows out there besides like Real World and MTV, where we were doing 26 episodes a year. And then Dog the Bounty Hunter started doing it as well. And so, I mean, it was an amazing run. It was just incredible. I would have never expected it. I think it helped out that I lived in a state, Rhode Island, because the state's so small. Everybody's so used to seeing you at Walmart or wherever at the grocery store. I mean, I live in a state that's only 47 miles long, 38 wide. So people are used to seeing you everywhere. And I think that helped out. Just because, it wasn't one of those things where it's like, oh my God, it's Jason Hawes. The minute you left the state, it was definitely a little insane. But I mean, it's been an incredible run, an incredible ride. And that's why we're happy that when A&E decided not to re-sign Ghost Hunters, that they came to Discovery and they asked if we would be willing to take it back as a team, because I turned down doing it in the first place because they didn't want the whole team. And it wasn't about me being above anybody else. I mean, we're a group of people who truly do this. We weren't casted to make a TV show. We are an existing group that existed for years prior to the television show. So, I mean, the whole thing has just been amazing to me. And to think how far the field has really come because the show, and I mean, it opened up an entire genre of television.
So I'm curious, and I know you guys are skeptical in the fact that for evidence you like to dismiss a lot of stuff. Like you'll look hard to be able to say, I don't know, I'm not sure. Let's put that on the side. Okay. I mean, to me, that's kind of like your trademark from being an investigator. And I'm 56. My first experience was at age 3. So I've been in this mess for a long time. I was baptized by fire, so to speak. And then my desire and thoughts and stuff like that to find answers for my own experiences is what has brought me to where I am today. So I'm curious, like, when was your aha moment when you actually stood back, kind of stood there for a second and said, yeah, I don't have an explanation for that. I think that was really legitimately something I can't explain. Was it prior to doing the show, or was it on the show? Or
no, it was prior to doing the show, because that's what got me into the field. Because I was never somebody who really thought about the paranormal, I didn't pay any attention to it, and I had an experience which I saw what I can only explain as an apparition. It looked like an Indian, and walking through an area, and I couldn't understand how it was possible. What I had just seen was possible, and no matter where I went, no matter where I looked, everybody, I mean, it was all the same. I hate to say garbage, but it really was. It was everybody, trying to sell you to go check out their pictures of orbs, which, I mean, I could create by slapping a pillow in the dark, taking a picture, or, waiting for a night that it was high moisture content or bugs or whatever. And, so there was just so much stuff out there where I was like, the hell with this. I need to understand this myself. I need to get out there and figure this out myself. And so I went from being somebody who never thought about the paranormal, never really cared about it, to somebody who was now diving deep into it and trying to figure out how these things were possible. And then shortly after that, I mean, I created a little website. It was called Rhode Island Paranormal Society, RIPS. But for whatever reason, like, I had helped out on a TV show that aired in Tokyo, and the website blew up after I helped out on that show, and we started getting cases from all over the place. So there was no point for me to call it Rhode Island Paranormal Society, because we're covering cases everywhere. So we changed it to the Atlantic Paranormal Society, and it was and it blew up from there. But Steve ended up meeting up with me while we were still Rhode Island Paranormal Society. So Steve and I have been friends longer than I even knew Grant. So, I mean, it was just amazing how it all took off. And I would have never thought it would have. I mean, it's been insane.
have you had a moment that eclipsed your initial experience?
I've had some incredible. There's the whole side that you see of taps on the television show, and then there's the whole side of taps that exist outside the television show. So, am I frozen to you guys, or am I?
No, you're live.
All right, all right, because I'm frozen on my thing. But so I mean, we do cases that aren't televised. We do cases for law enforcement. We do cases for religious organizations where we get sent in to write up preliminary reports on so-called demonic hauntings or possessions, which 99.9% of those have nothing to do with demonic or possessions. I mean, those usually over-medicated, under-medicated, self-medicated. You'll never see somebody become possessed who's not overly religious. So let's do the math on that one. So there's this whole side that we cover, but we have gone and done cases that have really left me scratching my head and trying to understand how these things are possible. and just some incredible activity that we've caught, whether it's things on the thermal that you can't see on the infrared camera, whether it's something walking directly through a wall, whether it's these voices that seem like somebody's living a normal day in their life, but we're sitting there, making contact with them. I mean, there's a lot of different things that have really, that had made me just really scratch my head over the years.
So, in your opinion, when you're investigating, and this is something that I've really never been able to understand, is in your opinion, what is the best way of actually interacting with spirits? I mean, is because one of the things that I see that you guys have never used is the spirit box, which I love. Not that I love the spirit box. I love the fact that you don't use it. But I mean, I just wanted to clarify that. I love the fact that you don't use it. But I mean, are there certain ways that you, whether it's your phrasing or talking to them, whether it's they would prefer to use the equipment other than actually speak into a recorder? What have you seen over your entire career that you have found best works?
Well, I think first off, just trying to connect with them. And it's tough because I think you need to change during every investigation as you go along. So, we don't do any research prior to going to a place. We'll go there, we'll investigate for a few days, and then we'll go do the research and see if any of the research correlates with anything we've caught through those first few days. Now, if anything does, now we know, all right, well, we were investigating, we caught this voice, this person saying this name, but we just went and researched and we found this name there. So let's try to communicate with that person, but also remember that person's from this time period. So when you're sitting there using phrases like, okay, well, does okay mean okay to them, or are they thinking that we're talking about Oklahoma, which is okay? So you need to take all these things into consideration, because also the way we speak has changed drastically over time. So the words we use, and when we're talking about different devices, I think my biggest issue is things like the Ovilus and so forth, where you can program words into this device. People program words into this device, and then they're like, oh my God, it's saying a demon name. Well, that's okay, but you just programmed all these demon names into this device. And how do you know? I mean, how do you teach something or someone from the 1800s or the 1700s how to get a reading up to 2.3 to say this word? Yeah, so none of that makes any sense to me. I mean, it would take me years to understand. If I get it to this, I can make it say that word. I can try to spell something out. I'm not going to do this in a week, in a month, and in 6 months. So many of these devices are really just hyped up for, I got to be honest, just whether it's for TV or just, for sales. There's no realness behind those. When it comes down to devices, I like using things like Zoom recorders and real-time analysis. Hook the headphones in, and if somebody's walking around with no headphones and I hear a voice and they hear the voice at the same time, then we know it's a disembodied voice. That is not an electronic voice phenomenon. But if only I hear it through the recorder, then we know that it's an electronic voice phenomenon. So, I like thermal imaging. I like zero lux cameras, things like that. And I'm not a big person on taking still pictures, because taking a still picture is like reading one page out of a novel. You never really know what happened prior, what happened after. Do you just have that one page out of the entire book? So I like things of that nature. But we also need to take into consideration now, when we're viewing other people's evidence, that there's all these apps out there for people to manipulate things. And a lot of people have hidden agendas to manipulate things, whether it's they want their video online to go viral, or their picture online to go viral, or things like that. And it's never been about that for us. I mean, I could have gone and done multiple movie deals by now, but they would have taken a case, they would have blown it way out of proportion for Hollywood and put it out there. So it's not real anymore. And that's just not who we are. We've always been about keeping it real.
So staying on the thought process here and talking about equipment, do you think that there's some credibility to going back and using things like cassette recorders and Polaroid cameras, 35 millimeter film cameras, to get away from the digital aspect of it, the manipulative aspect of it, so that if you do get lucky and catch a piece of evidence, that it's more legitimate.
Yes,
I guess
and
in a sense, that it's more legitimized, that you're not, it's pretty hard. Like I have a phenomenal Polaroid photograph that was taken. I felt the energy in where I was. I felt the whole entire thing. I said something out loud. I had just been on an investigation the night before. My Polaroid was sitting on the kitchen counter. I had just put a new film pack in it, hadn't put it away yet, took the photo, and I got an absolutely phenomenal photograph in the living room of my house of an entity standing right in front of me, giving me the finger. Sorry, sorry for the it's a freaking great picture. But I mean, like people see that and they're like, "Holy shit!" Like, wow. And I'm like, and to me, that's more legitimate than me taking something on my digital camera or my phone, and then being able to click to an app and manipulate the shit out of it,
but also,
to make it something it's not.
But in the same, people can take those cameras and open the shutter speed. They can set timeline. So there's a lot of ways they can manipulate those photos, which were a lot of things that I saw when I was first getting into this field. People, because it was before digital cameras and so forth. And you'd see people who, they'd set it so it would take a long exposure and things like that. So I think that there's some great investigators out there. I also think that there's some investigators out there who are hoping that they can get something that would put their name on the board, that would make people look at them, that make people visit their website so they can sell ad space. They can do this, they can do that. And you need to take into consideration that sometimes these people are willing to go to whatever extent to get people to notice them. And that hurts the field. It's like, the TAPS website, like I said, we get 90 plus million visitors. I could fill that thing with ad space. I could be making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year off of that. We don't. The only things you'll see over there are things like Brad and Barry Kling, who are friends of mine from, who did Ghost Lab and their podcast, or, things to get to the TAPS family, or radio shows, things that don't make me any financial gain, because it's not about that for us. It's never been about that. It's been about more just getting the word out and trying to help out as many people as we can, free of fee. We don't charge anything. It always costs us money to head to the cases. So, and I think there's just so many reasons for certain people to try to manipulate. Now, and there's some phenomenal people out there too. There's some great groups out there that I don't know. But there's also the TAPS family groups that I do know, and they're all around the world. And these are people who have our utmost trust. Every year, we didn't last year because of COVID, but we always have TAPS family reunion, which we could have hundreds of people from all over the world who are part of the TAPS family all show up to this one area. And we all go over cases and how we can further the field. And this has cost us money to do this. And because it's about helping people, and that's what it's always been about.
So I guess that the proper follow-up question to that is, what have you in the TAPS family kind of determined should be the next big step that we do in this field?
Well, I think first off, people working together. It's funny because Brad and Barry Kling just posted something the other day, talking yesterday or today, posting about how, do they think the field is moving forward, backwards, and so forth? And I responded just saying, I think right now the field's sitting at a standstill, because I think we need to get people in to the field who aren't motivated by celebrity status, who aren't motivated for their names to be out there, but who really want to see this field get pushed forward. So I think we need to start getting more engineers back into the field. I think we need to start getting more idea people into the field who have concepts of types of equipment that could benefit this field, that could help push this field forward, and start messing with things like infrasound and things of that nature, and start covering, trying to be able to span over different frequencies. I'm talking to some people right now that have a whole ham radio system that they're able to now go way into low end frequencies and all the way up, which I started messing with. I used to do a lot of things with computers. A lot of people don't know, but I have an extensive computer background, and my father was an international computer programmer. So I used to pull apart computers and modify and solder chip joints. And I have a CB in my garage, which I was actually able to take the D858 chip and modify it. So just by flicking toggle switches, I'm able to go way down in frequency, way down further than I legally should be able to, and way up in frequency. And these are things that I think we need to really start trying to lock in, where when we're getting these voices, okay, what frequencies are they coming in on? And if we go to those frequencies and we're able to put something out there on that same frequency, are they going to be able to hear us, maybe open up a direct line of communication back and forth in real time? I think these are factors that could really come into play, because there's different types of hauntings where throughout the years, for many years, I always looked at it where you've only got, when it comes to human type haunts, you have your intelligent, your residual, your poltergeist, things of that nature. But over the last 15 or so-called years, we've seen a different type of haunting that seems to be more prevalent, where it's more of a time overlapping, as if somebody's still living a day in their lives in the 1800s, and we're living our lives in 2020 or 2021, and for whatever reason, we're able to hear each other during certain times. Now, is that, and this whole time and space and time's only relevant here? Who knows? But if that's true, and the past and the present and the future are all really intertwined, well, there's got to be a way to be able to jump that. And that opens up the idea of, is that how sensitives are able to hear the other side? I mean, are they somehow more open to be able to hear someone in their time than somebody who's not sensitive? So I think there's just so many different factors that come into play, and there's a lot of different avenues we can go to really try to further the field.
If you start digging into those frequencies, what makes you, and maybe this doesn't make you certain, so maybe I'm speaking ahead of myself here, but what would make you feel for certain that those are spirits and not potentially something else that's in our universe that has not been recorded yet definitively, such as an alien? Let's just use aliens, I guess, and throw it out there as a broad term.
And right now, I think we'd have to hit those frequencies before we could start drawing those conclusions. I think we'd have to be able to get there and start making contact back and forth and seeing, again, what correlates, what connects, before we can start drawing conclusion. Is this worldly or otherworldly, or is this, coming from a different area? I just think we'd have to. It's all about trial and error when you get to these devices, right? And you start modifying things, because there's not equipment that's distinctively made for the paranormal. From day one, we've taken equipment and we've modified equipment to suit our needs for what we're doing. And we all know, everything's energy out there. It's just how you connect with this energy. We manipulate energy every time we plug in a hairdryer or a vacuum cleaner. So the spirits, if they're energy and they're just trying to connect, there's got to be something that we can design through trial and error that hopefully could align the different types of energy and allow us back and forth communication.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It was interesting. We had Johnny Hauser on a while back, and he had said he was playing around with the wah-wah pedal on his guitar, and that he was actually having conversations with his grandmother as he was hitting certain frequencies with the wah-wah pedal. And I found that to be extremely interesting, that the manipulation of an instrument like that with a device manipulating the frequencies somehow could have possibly opened up a doorway for him to have some sort of spiritual communication.
Well, and now comes down the point where, again, somebody, like I used to build CBs and modify CBs. Now comes a point where, could you somehow manipulate a frequency counter that you'd use on a CB? Because on CBs, if you get ones that have sideband allows you to slide in between the channels. So you need a frequency counter to sit there and say, all right, well, I'm going to slide in between channel 38 and 39. And you manipulate it and you watch the frequency counter. So now, is there a way to manipulate a frequency counter to connect to the wah-wah pedal to see when he hits that frequency that he's communicating with his grandmother back and forth, what frequency that's at? And if you can lock on that frequency, then are you able to send communication through that frequency and go back and forth? So you see where I'm going? So again, It takes somebody like my knowledge of frequency counters and modifying CBs and messing things like that, and his knowledge of the whole wah-wah pedal, and you connect people like us together, and are we able to work together to figure out how we can combine those two devices, or what he's learned just by using that wah-wah pedal to be able to connect to that frequency and send and receive from that frequency.
Well, there you go. You're welcome. So reach out to Johnny and figure out some cool thing, and then let me be at the preview.
There you go. I mean, yeah, it's funny, especially like, so I went from computers and being a master tech to, I got bored of the field because it became so repetitive. I've always been one of those people. I like a challenge. I like things changing, and the field I was in, it was always the same old. I mean, if there was a problem that came in, I knew that there was going to be 10,000 others, the same thing that I was going to have to fix. So it became just repetitive and boring to me. So my father-in-law, one day I told him, I said, I'm going to leave the field. He's like, try plumbing. And he was a plumber. I'm like, I don't want to be a plumber. He goes, try it. See what you think. So I rode with him and fell in love with the field because every day was something new. I mean, I could tear down somebody's wall and fix a leaking pipe. I was still solving a problem. And, it was always changing. But with that also came the whole fact of, all this other electrical and computer background. And then I started seeing things, especially on cases where people were running ground wires to copper lines in basements, and the EMFs were spiking, and it was using the copper lines. And so now you're creating this whole fear cage type thing, because the whole copper lines that are running through the house are now fueling EMFs. Now, EMFs, I've never sat there and said EMF, makes a spirit appear or whatever. But there's the whole EMF sensitivity thing where, and you can look it up, I mean, hypersensitivity to it, where nausea, fatigue, hallucination, skin irritation, paranoia, all these things come into play. So we started seeing a lot of this on these cases, and we were able to help out a lot of people by figuring that out, and removing that ground wire off of the copper lines and stuff like that. So, I mean, these are things you learn as you go, and it's just, and I think that's important, is each case is a learning experience, whether it's paranormal or not. You learn something, and you need to make sure you take that with you on every future case.
Yep. Oh, sorry, my own voice blew up in my ears. So one of the things that I saw you guys do years and years ago, probably in the first 5 seasons, and I know it was Steve, and I believe it was Tango as well, but the idea was to place like walkie-talkies in a certain location, walk away, even leave the building, and then kind of do an EVP session through the walkie. Mm-hmm. And the premise was obviously that maybe the frequency coming out of the walkie is something they could hear better than our own voice. But you never used it again. Do you? I mean, I guess there's a multiple question type thing, but I mean, do you continue to do stuff like that? And when you were trying to develop a new experiment, kind of what's your guys' process for developing something like that?
Well, I think the problem that we found with the walkie-talkies were, when you use the walkie-talkie, a lot of times it would manipulate other pieces of equipment that were in the house. Mm-hmm. So get false and I've seen too many people actually play off of that and never admit the truth. So so that's the problem. So you got the walkie-talkies going, but now you've got this person's K2 meter going off, or that person's motion sensor going off because the walkie-talkie's interfering with it. So that was a problem. We didn't want a piece of equipment that might benefit us here, but hurt us on the other end. So you're always trying to adjust to these different things. But we're always looking for new things to advance the field. I mean, we just started getting into using different sonar scanners and things like that. Things very similar to like what submarines use, but now we've got them where you can walk around. They're portable. You mount them on your shoulder. So they're literally sending out lasers and picking up any fluctuation that changes, and you're able to see it on a screen. If something changes, it shows on the screen that thing moving forward or moving away, which I think is important. And it's always about testing out new theories and so forth. Like I have a call with somebody. It's Thursday, I believe, and it's about testing out this whole new piece of equipment where they were able to create this system which does scan frequencies, and when it picks up something, it locks onto that frequency. And then we're able to see. All right, so now we're going to see if it picks up something. Is it something that we're able to understand, or that we're able to figure out what's being said? And if we're locked onto that frequency, then we'll be able to send out something at that frequency. So we're constantly looking for different things like that and trying to stay further away from a lot of these gimmicky devices.
Like the spirit box.
You see things like this ghost radar and stuff that people are using. It's like on your phone. Tell me how an iPhone is gonna. You see these people, they're sitting on a plane and they're using these things, and it's just, it's insane. It's like I don't know, it drives you crazy. It really does. But there's a lot of different things out there that I think have been that are coming, that we're looking at trying to modify to help us go forward.
I hope so, but I think also at the same time, I think that if we don't break a new line, like if we don't get into something that's kind of a new thought process, that we're just going to keep rebuilding the same crap over and over and over again, and it's not going to move us to where we need to be as a group. Honestly,
I 100% agree, and I think too many people are sticking with some of this equipment that has been proven time and time again to give false positives. And yeah, it creates a problem with that. It really does.
All right. So probably my last question for the night, and then I'll let Mike run away with the rest of the show. Kind of a plumbing question, right? Kind of. We've never gotten an answer to this. So we're at Five Flags Theater down in Iowa. Mike and I are. We're up in the veranda. We're walking around. And Five Flags Theater is connected to the Civic Center. Okay. So, like, they got this big 2-story open causeway, right, with just like some advertising and whatever. And then it goes to the Civic Center through a set of locked doors. But we're at Five Flags. But we happen to be outside the theater, and we happen to be up on the second story of this veranda, and there's public restrooms. Mike and I are standing outside the women's restroom, and we hear the automatic toilets flush in a very rapid sequence, like 10 of them. And I walk up to the door, and I knocked first, being the women's restroom. I asked if anybody was in there. Is there anybody in the restroom? And I'm knocking on the door, and nobody responds. And so I go to open the door, and the door is locked. And I'm like, well, that's kind of strange, right? I mean, like, why would the door be locked? Like, it wasn't locked. Like, obviously, you don't turn the lock here. You lock it from, maintenance locks it. It's closed for the night. And I'm like, well, that's kind of odd. So as we're standing there, I kid you not, and I can feel energy change and energy shifts all the time. It felt to me like there was going to be a group of people walking out of that bathroom at any given second. Like, I could feel the energy coming to that door. And I looked at Mike and I'm like, this door's going to open and we're going to freak out because this thing's like locked with the lock from the maintenance crew. And like, this door's going to open. Like, I could feel it. Like, there's just massive energy coming towards us. Nothing happens. It doesn't repeat itself. We put a recorder down there. We didn't get any EVPs. We go and talk back to the guy who's in charge of the arena and said, we had this weird thing happen tonight, and I'm sure it's just some sort of automatic flush thing to keep rats from coming up, or I think that was what my logic was, like to keep rats from coming up out of the sewers, like the toilets automatically flush at a certain cycle every hour or whatever the case might be. And we just happened to be up there and experience it. And it was kind of weird. And, and he looks at me and he said, we have nothing like that. Nothing. He goes, those toilets, unless there's somebody standing in front of them, those toilets don't flush.
Oh, is it
Yet we,
censored?
yeah, with the sensors, yeah. And we stood there and heard them all flush in succession. So odd experience, personal experience, but what's your take on that? Hearing that, I mean, like, what do you think could cause that? All of them. If it was one, I'd be like, yeah, there could have been a rodent in there and jumped up on the handle in front of the flush sensor, whatever. But all of them in succession. So all 6, 8, 10. It was 8 or 10.
Well, I'd have to check it out firsthand, but as a plumber, I have seen reverse pressure on the diaphragms where toilets. It wouldn't just be one toilet. I mean, they would all flush because it'd be reverse pressure of the water in the system.
Okay.
I mean, there could be many factors that come into play when it comes down to that. Of course, I'm one of those people where I'm not automatically going to draw a paranormal conclusion to it, especially when it comes to a plumbing. I mean, I dealt with, we had a case where we talk about still to this day, which was funny, but this lady's uncle, who was a plumber, died, and it was like midnight every night her toilet would flush itself. Well, and she thought her uncle was giving them a sign, but what it was is she'd use the bathroom at 11 o'clock, she'd go to bed, the flapper valve was leaking slow, and I don't know if you know what a flapper valve is, but when you pull the handle, flapper valve lifts up. And it was leaking slow. So once it got down to a certain point, it would kick the fill valve back on. So she was hearing the toilet. Somebody flushed it, but it wasn't. It was. I mean, I solved that case for like $2.47. But the fact. But when it comes to those toilets, there's a high pressure toilets, and you can actually pull the cap off, and there's an adjustment screw in them, so you can adjust the pressure when it flushes. But they do a lot of times they'll deal with a reverse pressure system where the toilets will all flush at one point if they've done anything to the system and changed the water pressure in it. Is that what happened? Not sure. It's one of those things where you'd have to be there during the time, and honestly, you'd have to have some sort of a gauge telling you what the water pressure was.
Right. It was just strange. I thought I'd throw it by you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, things like that are wild when it happens. It's but I always try to look for the real explanation. I mean, we had a case where a lady, her kitchen lights would start flickering by themselves, and she was believing that somebody was making contact. But when she was in the house, I mean, we ended up, Steve and everybody, we ended up opening up a part of the wall, and there were freaking chipmunks in the wall that now we're in the house and
chewing the wires.
Trying to fix that, but they were every time they scurry up, they'd hit the wire, and they'd start getting lights flickering back and forth. So where her belief that it being paranormal, and we were able to figure it out as it wasn't. So I mean, we always try to look for the real explanation.
So there, on a recent, I believe it was an Expedition X. You joined Jessica Chobot on the Island of the Dolls, which is my number one place that I want to go. Before my career's done, I want to investigate Island of the Dolls. But my question has nothing to do with your experiences there. My question has to do with a set of eyeglasses you were wearing. You had like, it almost was like ski mask almost, but it had like night vision, like recording video, like all the little nooks and crannies. And I want one, but I can't find it anywhere. So what was that something you were just kind of testing out? Or, I mean, is that actually for sale, or how? I mean, because a lot of times the TV shows are where you see the equipment for the first time. And I always go and look for it, but sometimes I cannot find it. But I mean,
we're actually,
what?
Oh, so
go ahead.
So the guy who built that is one of the head guys who actually helped build the Nintendo 3D, the 3D system, and it's a low light camera system where I mean, he's actually built other things too. I've got another one which isn't the same type of device, but it's actually this thing right here, which you can stick an Android camera into, and it does the low light system as well. So but yeah, we still have those. And we still had that. It was literally like one that was designed specifically. We all sat down one day. We talked about this because he had this new technology with this new chip, and he wanted to test it out. And we came up with this whole idea, and he built it for us. And the thing works phenomenal. I mean, it's great. It's I wish you could buy it. It's one of those things where, let's just say, a rather large game company decided that they didn't want that device out, and we'll have to leave it at that because I guess they were going to use it for some other stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. Fine.
I hate to ruin your night, Mike. Sorry, man.
That's all right. If you ever decide that you just don't want it anymore, be more than
that
happy
also
to
makes
take
me
it off
think
your
that
hands.
that makes me think I should never have that case with it in it anywhere near you. So
I would agree. Yeah.
I do not steal anything, but
No,
I will constantly ask you if I can have it.
well, I mean, if you're around and we have it in our case at that time, I'll definitely let you mess with it and check it out.
I appreciate that because I was very impressed when I saw that. I mean, because one of the first times I ever saw like the full spectrum goggles, and you guys haven't used those for probably 6-7 years now, but I immediately got out and found somebody that had them and bought it.
Well, and who's really good with doing stuff like that is Sean Porter from Ghost Stop. I mean, Sean's always looking at new devices and new ideas to help push the field forward. And Sean's been a friend of mine for a long, long time. But I mean, he's constantly working on some great stuff.
Yes, and he and you finally bringing this up are going to be at the Vegas Para Unity event on Friday and Saturday. So
yeah, I mean, Sean had texted me telling me he was going to be there about a month ago, and I mean, we're looking forward to this, man. It's gonna be a good time. Me, Dave, Steve, Sherry, we'll all be out there. I mean, you got everybody coming out there. I mean, it's gonna be a blast. We're excited about it.
Yeah, I definitely I definitely hope that it's as good of a time as I'm hoping it will be. I definitely have worked my tail off on it, but
I know you have. We got to give you kudos on that. I think you've done great. And no matter what, I mean, conventions, I think they're coming back. They're coming back strong. I think we're gonna have a good time out there, and I think it's only going to get bigger and bigger. And I'm looking forward to being a part of it and just getting out there and hanging out with everybody and just hanging out with the fans. I mean, I stopped doing conventions for a long time because my children, I mean, they were in football, they were wrestling on the weekends, and it was just tough trying to. I didn't want to miss those things. I mean, my boys' senior year this year, they just had their last game, and now they're getting ready to go off to college and stuff. And we've got the new season of Ghost Hunters kicking off on January 1st. So I mean, it's exciting times. We're having a blast.
So, I mean, with the 3 minutes that we have left, what can people expect out of this new season?
Well, first off, you're going to see a lot of familiar faces from the past, and I think that's important. You're going to see Amy, Adam, Dustin. You're going to see some other. I mean, Chris Williams, Meatloaf's coming to hang out with us again. We got the Ghost Brothers. We got Destination Fear guys. We got some incredible locations that we investigated. Some wild activity that we're able to document as well. So I think people are going to really be happy. And also, I think that was a big thing. I mean, when they did the reboot, and we chose not to do it because we wanted to stay together as a team. There's some great people, and we got Brian and Rochelle coming to the Vegas thing as well. And they're good friends of mine. And I think people they wanted to see the ghost hunters that they remembered, and we're bringing that back for them. And of course, Ghost Nation, which we went off and did because we could stay as a team, it was a phenomenal show. I mean, it was one of the highest watched shows out there. But it also, a lot of the things that I brought and I put into Ghost Nation, we wanted to bring and put into Ghost Hunters. So where the original Ghost Hunters, I mean, and even the reboot, it was more of like a preliminary investigation. They go there, they might be there for a day or two and so forth. We're not stuck to those limitations. I mean, if I need to be at a place for 2 weeks, nobody's questioning it because I'm the guy in charge. So we're there as long as we need to be. We do the investigation. We dive deep into the research and investigate more. And it's all about putting pieces of a puzzle together. And I think people really enjoy that. So the people who loved Ghost Nation and loved Ghost Hunters, I think they're going to be extremely happy with the new show. And I had posted something the other day, and people were saying, well, the music, the loud music and everything else. I resolved that. I mean, that was one of my biggest pet peeves, was playing that loud music, during the investigation, because people want to investigate with you. They want to feel like they're there. And you have no idea how often people have been like, hey, I just heard this sound. Did you guys hear that? Or I think it's saying this. And now they're able to do that again. They're able to sit there and listen and see everything that's going on. I mean, if we see something, the camera's not shooting directly at our face. I mean, it's turning and it's trying to shoot exactly what we're seeing. And I think all these are important things when it comes down to the show and just investigations in general.
So, okay, this is probably going to be the last question since it is like 9 o'clock. Since you're the guy in charge, so I'm going to blame you. Have you gotten rid of the spot interview on the show?
The spot interview. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, one of the things that Ghost Hunters always did is you would see a scene, and then it would flip over to an interview with the person that was there, where they would describe exactly what you just saw. And I thought the term was a spot interview.
Oh, well, I think you're thinking of like on the fly interviews. OTM.
Sure. Yes.
And so there's really not those anymore. We'll have, like after we investigated an area, we'll go out and we'll talk on camera about it. But after we investigate, because the one thing I don't want to take away is if we're investigating and something happens, I'm not going to stop and talk on the camera. And because I want to figure out what's going on. So you want me to talk to you and tell you about the experience, fine, but we're going to do it after I head out of the house or after I'm done investigating this area. So we have their just end of night wrap ups and so forth. And before the investigation, what we're hoping to accomplish and so forth. So not really. So you don't really have to worry. I mean, we're not going to stop an investigation and do an interview, because the investigation is what the show is about.
Thank you. All right. Well, then, unfortunately, that is the end of the show. I hope, as I said at the beginning of the show, I hope this is the first of many times that you will come back and
I look forward to it.
Talk shop with us. And obviously, Dave and I will see you in a few days.
I'm looking forward to it, man. We're gonna have a good time hanging out, and it's gonna be all of us, Kling Brothers. I mean, Ghost Brothers, you name it. We're all gonna be there. So people better get out there and check it out.
Absolutely. VegasParaUnity.com. If you haven't gotten your tickets yet, there's still some available. So, all right. Well, that does it for us. Thank you, Jason, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. And thank you for everybody who tuned in and checked it out. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome.
Absolutely. So that does it for us. Everybody stay safe, stay healthy. We want to see you back here next week. Everyone have a great night.